ask questions. Thanks, Amy. So myself and Priscilla and Laura are here today. The three of us are your representatives for IRC on the APT committee. And with the changes that happened last May, when we revised our APT guidelines to align with Article 5, there's been a lot of changes and a lot of questions. And so what we wanted to do as your representatives on IRC and your APT colleagues is just kind of go through some of the changes as people are thinking about promoting and or provide an opportunity to ask questions. And what I do also want to say very clearly is Laura and Priscilla and I consistently go back to the documents when the three of us have questions and go, not really sure, let's look it up. So if there is one message you get from today from us, it's you really got to go read the documents, all of them, to help you be successful in going through the APT process, because it is different. It's no longer one document, which is what we had before, but it's several. But they're very clear, but you do have to go read them. So with that, we've kind of divided the talk up, and we'll launch first with Laura, covering the first few slides, then myself, and then Priscilla, and then open forum for questions.
Thanks, Mary Beth. Yes, so, previously we have given brown bags on a yearly basis generally, but things have changed. And so there are a lot of questions. I'm going to start out and I'm going to talk mostly about kind of an overall general piece and some organizational pieces. And then much of that is really going to be touched on a little bit further by Mary Beth and Priscilla as we go forward in the next slides. It's pretty quick. It's about 15 slides. And again, what we really wanted to do is just kind of open it up for questions. But the first thing is that the documents that Mary Beth was talking about, so the intranet, people love it, people hate it. There's really nobody kind of in between, I don't think. If you're working from home still, I hear you hate it because you can't get in. But it is there still, and there are people that are able to access it. If you go to the intranet, what you will see, and it's not necessarily extremely intuitive, but what you're going to see on the top there is standing, and you can, I don't know if you can see my pointer, but right here it says standing committees. And if you go into the standing committees, what you'll see is APT, or appointment, promotion, and tenure, and that's where our documents are. That's where they live. And these documents, there's, as it appears, there's like quite a few of them, but the ones that I really kind of gravitate to are document number 4, number 5, and number 6. Number 6 is key because it's got your matrix in there, your matrices. So if you're like, okay, I'm going up associate for teaching track, it's got like appendix D, associate teaching. You pull that up and there's your little matrix right there for you. So that's document 6, which I find helpful. And then document 4 and 5, I feel like 4 is more of this overall description, and 5 is really kind of like, these are the steps that you need to take, and these are the things you need to do. The other thing that's important in here is the CV, the CV template. So I'm going to talk about these all briefly, but these are where they're located. So again, intranet, standing committees, APT, documents. And that is all the, again, the new criteria for you. For those of you who went through promotion last year, we did give you the option to go with the old because that's where you were working, but now it has been an entire year, and so we have all shifted to the new criteria. So even if you're not thinking of going up soon, I would take a look at those, because at some point you will, or you'll want to, and it's really, I think, important to see what you're shooting for, see where you're going for, and really make a plan and a trajectory with your division chair when you meet on a yearly basis, so that you can be successful when you do decide to go up. So when you do, there is a what's called Interfolio, and that is what we use as our template, our online template. So for those of you who started back before me or even with me, I think the first one that I ever turned in was a binder, and it was about 3 inches deep, and it was like, here's all this printed stuff. And now we have a great online platform, and it's called Interfolio. This is where we as the reviewers can go in, we can take a look at all of your materials, and this is where you as this person who's going up for a promotion is going to submit your stuff. So what you would do is, once you decide, I would like to go up for promotion this year, or I would like to do what we call an AGR, which is an anticipatory guidance review, otherwise known as a midpoint for some of you who are familiar with that terminology. Amy Hester will get you into Interfolio, and then what will happen is it will populate a template depending on your rank that is desired, as well as your track. Okay, so it'll have a template, and the thing is that it's really helpful to you, not just to us as the reviewers, but it's helpful to you to organize your criteria kind of by that template. And because it helps us to see, number one, the thought that you've put into your entire career and the review, but also the evidence behind it. So if it's just, we get in there and it's just this list of like 30 different documents, it's really hard for me to look in those documents and go, oh, I think that's for support of teaching. Oh, I think that document might be support of their service. Like if you put them in and you label them clearly and you stick them in the correct areas with the headings, then I can just say, huh, you know what? I wonder what the support for her or his service and leadership is. And it's like right there. It's like, oh, they volunteered here. Oh, they led, a, national thing here. And it's really easy to be able to go in there rather than just looking through a gigantic list of documents and me trying to figure out where you want to put that. And I think the other reason for that as well is when we'll talk about is kind of this, if you take something, you can only use it for one thing, and we'll talk about that. So you can't just say, well, I'm going to use this for teaching and I want to use it as an example for service. It's one or the other. And so sometimes it's not obvious to me when I'm looking, I wonder if he or she wants that under their service part, or if they're really using that for excellence in teaching. I'm not sure. So again, the template is there for you. So really, and it helps you organize yourself. Oh yeah, I forgot. I did this thing. I'm going to put that into here. And so when you're writing your letter and when you're putting your evidence, your packet, your dossier together, it's really helpful to stick that in there. And that's where I think this consider the end reader is, because I may not know your body of work. I may have worked with you for 5 or 6 years, but I didn't know maybe you published that article, or I didn't know that you were, on a national task force. And so again, making it really, if you will, obvious to me, the amazing things that you have been doing. In addition, much of that, if you have external reviewers, if you're going up for rank, your external reviewers need to know what you've been up to. And so again, they may not know, they may not have the office next to you. They may have only, seen your work from afar, but have not known all of the wonderful things. And so again, putting those clearly into a packet to say, here is my evidence of excellence in teaching. Here is my evidence of meritorious in research, and sticking those pieces. And it says right there, label documents by criterion, and then a title as to the subject of the document. So maybe you might put in there, this is my teaching evaluation for summer 2020, and that's going under my evidence of excellence in teaching. Okay, so again, not just a list of 50 different things, but putting them in those appropriate places. Again, it helps you to organize, and it helps us to see all of the great things that you're doing. Documents without logical labels and lack of order can make it hard to find the evidence the person is speaking to in their evaluation. So that is the other piece, is that you, and we'll get to this one, but you're going to write a self-eval. And in it, some of the pitfalls that we find is that maybe someone will discuss under one of the criteria that they led a national task force for 2 years, and that, you know, this was the work, but then we look on their CV and there's no mention of that or mention of any of the output of that work. And we go, huh, well, it's not even there. And so making those things match. So not only providing the evidence and putting it in the correct place, but making sure that it's cross-referenceable. And so maybe I'll start with your CV and I'll look down and go, wow, you know, here's some things here. And then I look at your self-eval letter and it's not mentioned. So again, making sure those things match up for you. Okay, so resources on the internet, please read the documents. I know they seem tedious, but it's really gonna help set you up. Again, even if you're not thinking about going for promotion right away, if you're thinking even about midpoint review or something like that, be familiar with them. Know what you're shooting for in the next couple of years. Once you get there, organize your portfolio in Interfolio through the template that Amy Hester will provide you in. If you slot and say, I'm tenure track, for teaching, that is the template that will pop up for you. And so it is built for you to be able to put those things in the appropriate places and to help you organize. The other thing that we actually developed to help us and to help you is the things that you need. So a checklist. So follow, as I just said, the Interfolio template. The CV in your correct format. That CV format, which I'll be talking about in a second, was discussed at one of our faculty meetings. So putting that in the correct format. And, you know, I will tell you, it is a pain to get it there the first time, but once you get it there, you know, as you do things, just continue to add them in there so that you're not, you know, and that will help you on your yearly eval as well, because at the end of the year, you're not going back and go, oh man, I did like 6 talks and I have no idea when those were. Just put them in as you go along. It really is helpful. You're going to need your self-evaluation letter, which we'll talk about, again, addressing the appropriate criteria. You will need a letter from your supervisor. And then there's a couple different options here. If you are going for let's say you are a senior instructor right now and you get your DNP or you get your Doctor of Ed or you get your terminal degree in something and you want to make that flip over to the professorial ranks, there are internal support letters that you will need. And those are there. And we'll talk a little bit about those letters. Your merit reviews from every year, your teaching evaluations, and again, clearly labeled, what courses are these, what years are they? And then if you are going up if for associate or assistant to associate or associate to full, there's also a required amount of external review letters. And that number is 3, and that is required by the chancellor's office. So that is not something that we made up. And again, we'll talk about that. And then of course, some additional supporting materials. So that is a checklist, again, that helps us to take a look at, to make sure that we've got the right stuff and that you've got the right stuff. Now, over on the right side of your document or your screen, you will see the reviewer list document. You need to submit, again, for external reviewers if you are going assistant to associate or associate to full. And so on the top there is for you, your name and your credentials, your track, the rank you are seeking, and then a summary of your expertise. And so for example, I might put hospital medicine, you know, acute care nurse practitioner or things like that. Priscilla might put, you know, certified nurse midwife. So expertise, areas of expertise in there. And the reason that we want you to stick that in there is because, again, even though we work together, I may not know all the great things that you're doing or your exact area of expertise. Or maybe I've got, you know, an area of expertise that may not be obvious as an acute care nurse practitioner. Maybe I have decided that I'm going to hook up with Sharon and be like an informatics guru. And nobody knows that about me. So I might put informatics in there. So what your expertise is. And the reason is because when we go as a committee, we have the ability to reach out to the reviewers that you have provided, but we also reach out to other external reviewers. And we need to know that they have a similar expertise than you. I, in good conscience, do not feel like I could review work on informatics, for example, or nurse midwifery, because it's not my area of expertise. And so that helps us to find reviewers that are appropriate outside of the college to look at your dossier. So when you provide reviewers external reviewer information, their name and credentials, their rank, and ideally, and I think we'll go over this in a little bit more detail, they are going to be at a rank above you, okay, or the one that you, at least the one you were shooting for, where they're located, et cetera. And I'm gonna let Priscilla and Mary Beth go more into detail, but we did wanna show you those checklists. Again, all of the things to help you get organized. Follow the CON CV template. This is going to help us, again, all be on the same page of where things go, where the appropriate headings are. If you have questions about that as you're putting things in, we're always happy to answer that. This was reviewed at faculty meeting. Gosh, I have no concept of time anymore. Probably 4 months ago, 4 months ago, 5 months ago. And it is there now. Everyone had the ability to provide feedback on that. So follow the template, please. And your division chairs should be pushing you or guiding you towards this when you submit for your yearly evaluations to get on the appropriate template. And then this is my last slide, your evaluation letter. And I mentioned this a little bit, is that elements, and I'm looking at this bottom point here, elements highlighted in the letter should be evident in the dossier. If you are gonna talk, your letter can only be 5 pages. It is addressed to the dean. It can only be 5 pages, and the smallest font that you can get in there is 11 point. Okay, so none of the 9 point, no sneaking. It's 11 points, and I think the max or the smallest margins that you can have is 1/2 inch. So it is limited. And so what you really need to do is talk yourself up in a limited amount of space. And so in that limited amount of space, if you are mentioning something that's really important and really helps you to meet that criteria and speak to that criteria, it should also be on your CV. Okay, so, or you know, and in the packet of evidence that you are giving the packet in Interfolio. So again, cross-referencing, making sure that things are mentioned in multiple places. Speak to the criterion succinctly. It is amazing and it's great when I look at a letter, a self-evaluation letter, and it says, here's how I meet excellence in teaching. Here is how I am meritorious in service and leadership. And I mean, the criteria in the matrix, they are listed right there for you. Cut them and paste them, put them in there, and then speak to each one succinctly. It really, really helps you organize. It also helps so that you aren't saying, well, I'm going to use this for this thing for excellence in teaching, and I'm going to use it for excellence in service. Remember, one or the other. So listing those things out, speaking to them succinctly, limited space, and really just going for it. This is a time that you need to brag about yourself, your achievements and strengths, and how you have progressed. So maybe you were a member of a board, and then you became a chair, you know, or a president, or a, you know, something like that. So again, leadership progression maybe, or, you know, I was a co-teacher of this class or a TA for this class, and now I am a course lead, or those types of things. How have things progressed for you? You know, I started on a local, I gave a small local talk, and now I'm talking about that topic nationally. Advocate for yourself, demonstrate your progression and your academic growth. And as Jackie Jones always likes to say, your academic maturity. Okay, so you have 5 pages, speak succinctly, list out the criteria, just cut it and paste it from the grid, put it in there and say, this is how I meet these criteria. This is what I've done. And then make sure that your CV template and the documents that you provide are organized in that manner and placed into Interfolio. And with that, I'm going to let, I think it's you, Mary Beth, yes?
Yeah. So tagging on to what Laura said, and again, when you go into the intranet and you look at these documents, the APT team before us really did a very nice job of trying to lay things out in a very succinct manner for us, all of us, to try to understand what are the expectations and what should go into your dossier so that there aren't any surprises within the expectations. If you go into its document 6, it's got all the grid criteria for all of our roles within the college, instructor level, as well as IRC and tenure track. And so these grids lay out really clearly for us. If I'm assistant professor and I wish to go to associate professor, what do I need to get together to organize myself to go up for associate? So when you're putting your packet together, you're putting it together for the rank in which you wish to promote. So not the rank you're at, but the rank you wish to promote. When you read those criteria, they gave you examples, and they aren't the only things you can put in those categories of meritorious and excellence. They're solid examples, but it's up to you as the individual to look at the overall criterion for what is meritorious and what can you align in that criterion for meritorious and then excellence. Again, you can't double dip. So be very thoughtful about your performance and the areas that you want to shine in, and you want to demonstrate how you met those different categories. Speak to those elements not only in that cover letter, but then also those supporting documents that speak to those elements as well. Examples should be pretty straightforward, and most importantly, they should be current. So for example, if I'm going up for promotion, I want to submit this August to go up in this next fiscal year from assistant to associate. It's 2021. I'll be promoting in 2022 if successful. So I shouldn't be putting information in there of success in 2015 as my primary example of showing meritorious. I need to show that academic maturity, that growth from that 2015 forward for a dossier I'm submitting in 2021. It doesn't mean my work didn't start in 2015 and I built on it and I'm showing that progression in my dossier, but you don't want to have old content in your dossier as you're trying to go up. We're looking for that progression and your maturity and your growth in your professorial role, or from your instructor to your senior instructor, showing that growth in that dossier. In the same breath, if you're going up from associate to professor, then we should be looking at that content that's going from the time you got associate to the time you're going up for professor. So if I did work again in 2015 and I promoted in 2017 to associate, I shouldn't be using that 2015 content to promote to professor unless I'm showing growth in that element. So we're looking, and Jackie Jones is delightful in terms of always reminding us on academic maturity. We're looking for that progression and growth in all of us as we go up for promotion and try to change ranks, whether it's from the instructor to senior instructor, and then once you get your terminal degree, assistant professor, all the way up to professor. Again, choosing one piece of work per one category. So making sure that in each category, if you look at the stem of meritorious expectations and excellence, they have a solid item that they're trying to identify for all of us in our performance criteria. So make sure you align your work and be proud of your work, one element or one example per criteria. You can have more than one, but don't double dip. Don't have the same element in meritorious criterion 1 and then 3. So align your body of work to align with the meritorious categories and your excellence categories. So a lot of us, all of us, have multiple examples of what amazing colleagues you are. So you can put more than one example in a category, just don't repeat those examples in other categories. I hope that makes sense. No double dipping. So looking at our categories for IRC, teaching, we're looking for those merit review summaries and your student reviews to be clearly articulated as well as explained. We're looking for your growth in your teaching and your self-reflection. So if you only upload what the students said in terms of your evaluations, but you don't tell us what you did with that data, it's hard for us to understand how you're growing in your teaching from a meritorious perspective. So we're looking for how you all have taken the feedback that our students have given us, how you evaluated it, and what changes you have made with objective information. And some of it's going to be subjective, right? But try your best to provide as much information as possible of when we get feedback, what do we do with it? And how do you continue to advance and expand your teaching expertise, as well as the adjustments you made for your courses? Provide a summary, and that summary should be, if you're going up from assistant to associate, associate to professor, those summaries need to be understood by people external to us. So as you're going up to associate and professor, remember that some of these tools, these evaluations that you provide will go external. So people need to be able to read it as a standalone document to understand how you as a teacher get feedback, evaluate the feedback, and what you do with that feedback. Scholarship, I know that the division chairs provided a really exceptional summary of what is scholarship, both tier 1 and tier 2, and ways to get to that. And I know that's available if you want to re-listen to it. They did record it. I want to say that was in February or March of this year. But scholarship is an expectation for us as academics. We need to be considered excellent to promote. You need to have tier 2 scholarship. So tier 1 scholarship is awesome. It's not necessarily, it's not peer reviewed, but you must have peer reviewed to have excellence. So when you're looking at your scholarship, look at the depth and breadth of how you're developing your scholarship. If you have only if you have only tier 1 scholarship, you won't meet the excellence criteria to promote up, because you must have tier 2 scholarship. So be working on that diversity of your scholarship, that blend of tier 1 and tier 2, but that know that when you want to go up for promotion, you will need to have that tier 2 scholarship, which is peer reviewed scholarship. A couple common misperceptions, things that we have been asked as APT members, has to do with peer reviewed versus editorial review. So we've gotten comments in terms of, well, I did a book chapter and I submitted it to the editor. The editor gave me feedback and I adjusted it. Well, that's not necessarily peer reviewed. Peer reviewed is when it goes out for blind review and those external experts provide feedback. The editor does look at it, but those external reviews looked at it. It came back to you, you made adjustments and you submit it again. So making sure that you actually have truly peer-reviewed documents contrasted to editorial review is really important to be able to mark that as tier 2 scholarship. Also in these documents, speak to your body of scholarship. Speak to the collective expertise that you bring to the table and how you've developed that scholarship. So I work really hard in evidence-based practice. So when I speak about my body of scholarship, both tier 1 and tier 2, it is those columns that I will write that are not peer reviewed. And then also the articles that I write that are peer reviewed. Invited talks are not peer reviewed tier 1 scholarship, but refereed talks where I've submitted an abstract and it went through a blind review process and I was selected to present. So it's a peer reviewed event. So speak to your body of scholarship that you bring to the table, both tier 1 and tier 2. And again, you have to have tier 2 to promote up in excellence. And then leadership and service. We used to simply have service, but then with the changes, the chancellor added leadership. So it wasn't necessarily a college of nursing decision, but it came from the chancellor. But in my personal head, it makes sense, right? Because all of us, as we advance in our careers, we all become leaders. Leadership isn't a title. Leadership is what individuals do, right? So when you're looking at service and leadership, think broadly, not only what do you do from a leadership role and a service role within the college. So within the college, what committee do you sit on? When you sit on committees, are you a member or have you tried to advance yourself to a chair role? So that would be showing your academic growth, your academic maturity. And then from an outside perspective, what organizations do you belong to? Are you on any organizational committees? In those committees, are you a member or are you a leader? So thinking about your leadership and your service, internal at the college and external at the college. If you're involved in service projects on campus, are you a member of a committee on campus or are you holding a leadership role on campus? Remember that advising, being part of comprehensive exams, writing letters of support for our students, being part of student interviews, that really isn't service. Those are expectations of our jobs and our roles. So when you think about service, it really is that committee work. It's also doing peer reviews. So there's been a couple sessions, a lot of sessions actually, on how to engage in Tier 2 scholarship. And one of the things that I know I recommend my students do and the PhD students do is to become a journal peer reviewer. And that's service. If you become a peer reviewer for a journal, that does count as service because you're giving forward to our profession as a blind peer reviewer for people that are doing peer review journal articles. So look at those criteria for leadership and service. Again, we're looking for that growth in terms of engagement and or leadership. And there's lots of opportunities for service within the college, on campus, and then external to the college as well. And I'll hand over to Priscilla.
Sorry.
There you go.
Yeah. Can we forward these ourselves or is Laura, you're in charge. Okay, great. Hi, everybody. So these prior slides have been talking about this actually. So Laura and Mary Beth have already been talking about the timeline of the work completed. We've been talking about the components of the dossier and the areas that are reviewed for promotion. And these have all should be pretty familiar to you as they're very similar to our annual reviews. I think this slide is talking again, not to beat the bush, but growth in the faculty role. So growth in teaching, growth in scholarship, growth in leadership service, that's what we're looking for, that maturity as a faculty. And the APT looks closely then at what you've done since your last promotion. So as you form your dossier or even just start thinking about making a dossier, think about what you've done since your last promotion, because that is what is going to be most important within that. Go ahead. Yeah, so I'm talking about the reviewers. This slide is about external reviewers, but what I want to do is just give an overview of what's required for each rank promotion. So for every, and this has been alluded to already, I'm just going to reiterate it. So for each promotion, regardless of rank, you need a letter of support from your supervisor, which is usually your division chair. And then for instructor to senior instructor, that is the only letter of support that you need, is your letter from your supervisor. If a person is seeking promotion to assistant professor after a terminal degree, they will need a letter from the supervisor, of course, and 3 internal support letters. And we'll talk about these on the next slide. They do not need any external letters. They can have an external letter, and one of those three could be an external letter, but all that is required is that it be an internal letter. And then persons seeking promotion to associate professor or higher will need, again, a letter of support from their supervisor, and 3 external letters of support. And they do not need any internal letters of support, although they can, those also can be submitted, but you definitely need the 3 external letters. So let's talk a little bit about the external letters. This is well delineated in the paperwork, on the internet. But basically, these external reviewers need to be from outside the university. They need to be at the rank that you're seeking or higher. So if you're going up for associate professor, then they need to be an associate professor or higher. What is interesting is that they can have no prior, you can have no prior direct collaboration or supervising relationship with the external reviewer. So you can, you could have met them at a conference, you could have maybe been on a committee together, but it could be somebody you don't even know. You only know them because they have similar scholarship. And so that's the other thing to think about when submitting recommended external reviewers, is that they have similar scholarship as yours, similar scholarship interests, at least an overlap, right? So that they'll be able to understand your scholarship when they look at your dossier. Laura showed us that checklist. And then if you're going up for associate professor or higher, you will be asked to submit 3 names of possible external reviewers, and also why they might be a good external reviewer for you, in that usually it has to do with scholarship. We may, the APT then will take those, and we may, the APT may find other external reviewers, not the 3 you submitted. It might be some of the ones you submitted and some of the ones that the APT finds, but just so that you have, you give us an idea of some external reviewers, and it also helps us see what your scholarship is. Great. And then go ahead. And then internal reviewers. So remember that internal reviewers are for candidates who are seeking promotion to assistant professor after a terminal degree is achieved. And so these are letters from your peers at the University of Colorado. They have to be at the rank you're seeking or higher. So it would be assistant professor or higher. And consider when you're asking for internal reviewers, really consider the timeline for promotion, and make sure you give your peers plenty of time to do a thorough job with the letters. They're actually pretty complete and can be fairly detailed. It takes time. So give them time to do a good job with it. And consider providing talking points to those writing the letters. So really delineate where, how you are meritorious in teaching, or how you're meritorious in scholarship, and what, and what your, how you're meritorious or excellent in scholarship and service. And that will help them write a good letter for you. Go ahead. Yeah. So this is the last slide. So thinking about promotion. So we hope you are all thinking about promotion, because we all should be always thinking about it, right? That's the faculty role. So it's doing better, moving moving your scholarship forward, moving your teaching forward, moving your service and leadership forward. That's what we do. So, so things to think about. Make sure you familiarize yourself with the rank criterion, and Mary Beth and Laura talked about this already. Get into that internet and look at these. Again, talk with your division chair. They're going to be your ally. It's always good to have another person looking at your work. It maybe is a little difficult to do, but and they can speak to your successes and where you need growth and help you so that over the next year you can move forward in that growth area and then be more ready. Again, consider submitting for anticipatory guidance review, which we can talk more about if you like. And again, know the timelines, follow the guidelines. For instance, the CV, use the template. Actually, when I did mine, I found all sorts of things I had done that wasn't on my other CV because I didn't have a category for it. You know, so sometimes having those categories delineated help you fill them. You know where to put something, whereas before you didn't know where to put it. So use the CV, follow the guidelines for all the criteria, and make sure you make a timeline so you know when things are due, and start early, because making your dossier is very self-reflective. It can be time consuming, and you want to make sure you do a good job. And then realize that your dossier should demonstrate all your achievements as a professional, in teaching, as a leader, in service, and your scholarship in one standalone document. So that's it. So, oh, we misspelled questions, but try not to have no misspellings on your dossier. That's the reminder for us.
We did it on purpose, not really.
So I have a question about the external reviewers, since that could be a potential for me. Would I be able to use somebody that I met on a work group? I mean, I'm not collaborating on a specific paper with them, but I might be collaborating with them as a, voice in a guideline or something.
Yeah, you just have, they'll ask you your relationship, and, we can, on that form that you fill out, that's one of the relationship, you put that in. I mean, that sounds like that could be an external reviewer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And if you look on its document 4, page 13, it describes exactly the kind of relationships that you can have. So, I mean, we meet people through work groups, right? And then they're aware of our work and we learn each other. It's not someone I'm constantly collaborating with. So you don't want to have conflict of interest. But if you look at document 4 on the internet, it's called Con IRC criteria. Page 13 tells you exactly what we're looking for with external reviewer selection. And that's where Sharon too, it's so helpful. The document we put together for you guys to tell us what your expertise is, because I don't know anything about informatics, but my guess is that it's a really large field and you might specialize in it. But if you don't tell me what your specialization is, if we need to find another reviewer, we don't know how to do that. We'll do it well, right? Then we're just doing a pick. So telling us your focal expertise is really important in that document when we have to find external reviewers for you guys.
Right. Very helpful. Thank you.
Amy just put in the chat, if you guys haven't seen it, your intent to promote will come out in June.
I have a question, depending on who, if it's who is covering stuff, one for Laura and then one maybe for Mary Beth. So for Laura, when you were talking about the examples that you need to put in, do you guys want examples of the continued growth, or just like, is there like a number of examples or a general recommendation for any of those things, or just as long as it shows the growth and there's examples?
Just as long as it shows growth and there's examples.
Okay, and then Mary Beth, my question for you was regarding some of the evaluations. You had talked about how you needed to summarize them. Do we need to have them, all of them? Like, do you want them all, like all of those teaching summaries of evaluations and things like that? Like one long PDF, or do you want those broken up into various courses, or do you want snippets of that?
We're all muted.
You're muted, Mary Beth.
Oh, sorry. So that's in document 5, and it doesn't need to be all your evaluations. There is a timeline. I want to say it's the last 5 years of your merit evals. But we are looking for you to show growth and progression, right? So if I've taught EBP for the last 7 years, but I'm promoted 5 years ago and I'm going up for another one, I might start with 7 years ago what I did, but then I'm going to show how I evaluated and how I got forward and how I grew and what changes I made to get to a higher evaluation for my students. So document 5 tells you the number of your merit reviews that you need to provide, and then that summary of basically what'd you do with the data. You know, if I got really bad evals for 7 years in a row and I didn't do anything about it, well, that's a problem. So we're really looking for, what did you do with those evals? What did you innovate? How did you grow? What kind of changes did you make? And speak to that story.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and maybe your growth in education or teaching might be that you now are, you know, we don't want to base everything off of student evaluations, but so it may be that you're now mentoring other faculty or are now the lead of a course. Yeah, so there's other ways we look at growth.
Or things like, you know, with all the evolving things in the internet. So you attended a class to get better at X, Y, or Z to make you a better instructor, and how you incorporated that into your class. So we're looking for that academic maturity, that feedback, that collaboration, and the things that we do to continually improve. And then your reflection on that and demonstration of it.
No, I think that's helpful. I think it was just like, especially when you're teaching 21 credits, I was like, even if that's over just like a year or two, like, and especially if you have like a large class of over 100 students, like those evals are long.
Yeah.
And so like trying to figure out like what of those evals eventually you guys would want, I think was important.
And again, we don't want to make the process seem absolutely prescriptive, but we want to make sure that everyone looks at the criterion and ensures that they're aware of them and they have elements to plug into it. I know Priscilla, myself, and Laura, when we've talked about how we looked at ourselves, you know, we had the criterion and we had them all dog tagged. And so when we were meeting things, we were writing down, we're making notes so that as we were developing our dossier over time, it was relatively fluid in putting together our academic growth to go up for the next professorial level.
I guess I would say one more thing, and that is, don't wait for somebody to suggest that you go up for promotion. I mean, that's nice, but hopefully you self-initiate as well, right? It's not something that somebody else needs to tell you to do. You should be able to decide to do that on your own. Yeah.
I have a question. It's Kim. For those of us that did the midpoint evaluation of where you're at, here are things you're doing well, here's where you have needs. Are we going to receive those back before we move on into moving up and making the application to increase rank? Are we going to get those back? Because I didn't get mine back yet, and I did do that.
Yeah,
That's a really good
I'll let
question.
Mary Beth do that one.
Yeah, so APT completed all of our work at the May meeting, and we moved everything forward to the dean. So everything now sits in the dean, and once he reviews everything, he will then be the final determinant, and he will get the letters out. Our goal was July, but hopefully you'll hear something soon, but everything's sitting in that space at the moment.
Okay, I appreciate just the FYI on that. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it does seem like you give it to us quite a while ago, and then but we work on them, month by month through each one, and we want them to all go out at the same time.
Thank you, Kim. This is Angela Powell. Thank you, Kim, for asking that question. I had the same thing, but I just heard someone say that you have the intent to promote will be out in June. So is the deadline in June, or will it be in July after you receive the letter?
Well, what Amy put out there, Amy Hester, she sends out the intent. She said she'll send out a request to faculty to declare their intention to promote soon. Normally she sends it out in June. So we'll follow up with her to, check in with the dean to see when the letters will go out so that people can align those timelines well.
Do we know when
Thank
the
you.
intent to promote is due?
I think it's
From
August 15th.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, thank you. This was very helpful, the explanation of all the components. It's very helpful. That's all I have to say about it.
Yeah, so the intent email goes out. You have to declare August 15th, correct, Amy? And then everything is due October 15th with your dossier. And then, as we've tried to say, it's your dossier is a reflection of you. So they take time. Amy's done a great job of trying to make sure the Interfolio matches the new criterion. But as Laura spoke to, labeling your files to help us find it so that it's easy to see your success and your amazing work is really helpful, especially when we have to send things out to external reviewers. So we're not the only ones looking at your work. So organization is really helpful.
Mary Beth and Laura, I just want to say thank you to both of you. I have spoken to both of you numerous times because I felt lost in this process. And it didn't come from a university system that had it as well organized as this. So I was feeling kind of lost. And you have provided some really, really good guidance. And the one thing from both of you is your direct honesty on you've got it, no, you don't. And I think that is the most valuable piece that both of you have shared with me is that honesty of what I still had missing or where I needed to strengthen because I couldn't see it myself. So thank you for that. That is really important as we're doing this process. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it works the other way, right? Sometimes you don't see the successes that you have, and just getting somebody else to look at the big picture, helps you find those.
Well, please reach out if you have any questions. We are here. We want people to be successful. Thank you. I think probably the majority of us on this call have another meeting in another 3 minutes. So have a great rest of your week.
I was going to ask though, Amy, how do faculty find the past lunch and learns if people want to go back and listen to them again? Oh,
Amy can't actually talk for whatever reason. Sorry,
Oh.
Amy, I keep telling you.
On mute though, which is weird.
Oh. So maybe you can send out something to faculty, to Alcon, on how people find those other recordings, because they really are exceptional. So take the time to go back and listen to them. They're pretty awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.